I printed the loan agreement, the forged signature, the screenshots, and I laid them all on the coffee table. My mom blinked, then whispered, "You're really doing this?" I looked her in the eye and said, "No, you did this. I'm just cleaning it up." "Hi, I'm Lauren." For most of my life, I was the quiet, dependable one, the one who paid rent on time, cooked dinner, and never asked for anything back. But when I found out my own mother had used my identity to take out a loan for my brother without telling me, I stopped being silent. What happened in that living room changed everything. And no, this isn't a story about revenge. It's about reclaiming what's yours, even when it means walking away from your own family. Before we dive into the story, let me learn a bit about you. If you're a charming lady, please leave the number 1 in the comments, and if you're a dashing gentleman, leave the number 2. This way, I can send you a special greeting. Now let's start the story together. The first time I noticed it, I was sitting cross-legged on the hallway floor, my backpack still slung over one shoulder, holding a watercolor painting that I had spent 3 afternoons perfecting. It was a simple scene. A golden tree with falling leaves, a girl on a swing, and sky that shifted from orange to indigo. I thought it was beautiful. Thought maybe Mom would too. She was standing at the stove, stirring a pot of chicken broth, the air thick with ginger and steam. I held out the form I'd filled for an after-school art class at the local community center. I'd written every line carefully in blue pen, printed neatly, even clipped the painting to the back. She smiled, soft and brief. "Sweetheart, this is lovely, but Ryan's voice coach just billed us for another set of sessions. Let's try next semester, okay?" My hands didn't tremble. I nodded, folded the form in half, and slipped it into the front pocket of my backpack without another word. At dinner that evening, Ryan was handed an envelope. "Studio time," Mom said with a proud little grin, as if the manila paper held a dream instead of $20 bills. "Don't forget to confirm your session for Sunday." He was already on his phone, half listening, half smiling. I stirred my rice and broccoli, watching the soy sauce pool around the edges of my plate. No one asked how my school day went. They rarely did. We sat at the table, the 4 of us, but it often felt like 3 people and 1 quiet observer. Ryan filled the space easily, stories from his a cappella group, a new chord he'd mastered, something his music teacher said. Mom would light up, nodding, laughing. Dad, tired from the hardware store, would hum his approval and go for seconds. I listened. I always listened. That was the role I played best. After dinner, I helped load the dishwasher, then padded up the stairs to my room. The house had settled into its usual hush, Mom watching a cooking show, Dad already dozing in his recliner, Ryan's guitar humming softly behind his door. I pulled out the folded application and laid it on my desk, flattening it carefully. The paint still smelled faintly of oranges and pencil shavings. Instead of tossing it, I placed it into the bottom drawer of my desk, behind some old math notebooks and a photo album no one had opened in years. The next morning, I layered on an oversized hoodie that used to belong to Ryan and raked leaves in the front yard before the school bus came. Mom peeked out and gave a quick thumbs up before retreating inside. The leaves made small crackling sounds beneath my sneakers, a sound that felt louder than the dinner table some nights. Later that week, I asked Grandma May if she still needed help at her antique store. It sat on the edge of town, a quiet place that smelled like cedar and cinnamon, filled with clocks that ticked at different paces, and shelves that bowed under the weight of old books. She smiled and handed me a rag. "If you don't mind dust," she said, "there's always work." I didn't mind dust. Dust didn't ask questions. It didn't forget to say thank you. So every Saturday, I'd take the city bus and spend hours polishing brass doorknobs, sorting postcards by decade, and listening to the quiet hum of something that felt steadier than home. One evening, Dad passed by the living room while I was sketching a tree from memory. He glanced down, paused, then said, "You're good at this." I looked up, hopeful. He added, "But Ryan has real potential. You're good too, but it's different." He meant it kindly. He really did. But his words stayed with me like a bookmark in a chapter I hadn't finished reading. Good but different. Capable but not chosen. That night, I folded the sketch in half and slid it under my mattress. I didn't cry. I didn't even frown. I just nodded to myself, the way people do when a truth becomes official. Autumn rolled forward. I packed my own lunches, kept my grades up, and stopped asking for things. Instead, I started small. I helped Grandma May rearrange display cases. I clipped coupons from the Sunday paper. I watched how people quietly kept going even when no one clapped for them. Sometimes I'd hear Mom humming Ryan's latest melody while folding laundry, or I'd see Dad pull up a YouTube video of one of his school performances. They were proud of him. That wasn't the part that hurt. It was realizing I could vanish from the room and no one would pause the story to notice. But I wasn't angry. Not yet. At 14, I still thought, maybe if I just stayed helpful and invisible long enough, someone would see me. I was wrong. What I didn't understand then was that silence, when repeated enough times, stops sounding like patience and starts looking like permission. And so, I gave mine. I didn't cry. I just folded the paper in half and whispered, "Noted." When Ryan graduated and moved in with Alyssa's family in Boston, the apartment near campus stood empty. It was a modest 2-bedroom, a little worn from his band nights and late parties, but the location was perfect, just a 15-minute walk from my university. I had been waking at 5:30 every morning to catch the bus across town and working evening shifts at the cafe. So when I asked my mom if I could move in, I thought the request made sense. She didn't even glance up from her phone. "Sure, but you'll need to pay rent, half the market rate." "Did Ryan pay rent when he lived there?" I asked, more curious than confrontational. She raised an eyebrow like I'd just missed something obvious. That was different. He was in school out of state, and he had bigger expenses. I didn't argue. I just nodded and agreed. A week later, I moved in. The first thing I noticed were the tape marks, tiny rectangles of torn wall paint where Ryan had once stuck up posters of his favorite bands. There was a burn mark on the carpet, a leftover from one of his birthday celebrations. His scent was long gone, but the echoes of his time there hadn't faded. I wiped down every counter, vacuumed the baseboards, and opened all the windows to let in fresh air. I told myself this was my space now, not borrowed, not temporary. But it never quite felt like mine. I transferred the rent to my mom on the first of each month, no delays. I covered the utilities, the Wi-Fi, the repairs when the shower head broke. I stocked the fridge with groceries I bought on sale and lived on a schedule that didn't leave room for mistakes. Between lectures, cafe shifts, homework, and sleep, I barely saw daylight. That November, the cafe I worked at extended its hours for the holiday rush. I volunteered for the Thanksgiving morning shift. It was double pay, and my manager had 3 kids at home. I poured coffee for last-minute shoppers and students stuck on campus. By early afternoon, my feet throbbed, and my apron smelled like espresso grounds and fryer oil. On my break, I scrolled through social media. My mom had just posted a photo of the family dinner table, perfectly lit and curated. Sylvia, Frank, and Ryan sat smiling with Alyssa at the head of the table, hands clasped over a roasted turkey. The caption read, "All together, so grateful." I wasn't in it. I wasn't mentioned. I hadn't even been asked. When I got home that night, my apartment was dark and quiet. I made myself a grilled cheese and stood at the kitchen counter to eat it, still in my cafe uniform. The sandwich was too hot, the cheese too sharp, but I didn't complain. I'd stopped talking to myself out loud months ago. What was the point? The next afternoon, my mom stopped by unannounced. She placed a shopping bag on my kitchen table and pulled out a pastel pink satin dress with thin straps and a tag that still clung to the side. "This is your bridesmaid dress," she said, smoothing the fabric. "Try it on and let me know if we need alterations." I touched the dress carefully, surprised by how heavy it felt. It shimmered under the apartment's cheap overhead lighting, like it didn't belong here. "There's a receipt inside," she added. $350. I already paid, so just Venmo me when you can. I blinked. "So I'm paying for it?" She looked at me like I'd asked whether water was wet. Lauren, you're an adult now. You're responsible for your share. I've already got a million things to juggle for this wedding. Band deposits, catering. I didn't argue. Again. I just nodded, like always. After she left, I laid the dress across my bed and stared at it for a long while. It looked expensive, delicate, like something that had been meant for someone else. I opened my laptop, logged into my credit card account, and entered the amount. That night, dinner was instant ramen. I sat on the couch, feet curled under a blanket, watching steam rise from the bowl. While I waited for the noodles to soften, I opened Facebook. My brother's engagement shoot had just been uploaded. Sunset photos at a lakeside park, Alyssa in a white dress, Ryan kneeling, holding out a ring the size of a marble. There were comments from neighbors, distant cousins, friends of friends. She's glowing. They look like a magazine couple. So happy for them. I finished my ramen, drank the broth, and closed the laptop. No one had asked if I could afford the dress. No one had offered to split the cost. I was just expected to show up in pink, smile, and stand quietly beside the people who never once clapped when I succeeded. The wedding wasn't for me. The dress wasn't for me. And my place in the photo wouldn't be earned. It would be assumed. That dress cost more than my textbooks. And still, I wasn't invited to give a toast, just to show up and smile. The day they moved in, I came home to find my apartment filled with boxes. Diaper bags, foldable strollers, a box labeled nursery essentials stacked on top of my microwave. Ryan was on the couch, scrolling through his phone, and Alyssa was lighting a pumpkin-scented candle on the counter like she was settling into an Airbnb. Mom stood in the doorway with her purse still slung over her shoulder. "You'll let them stay, right? Just for a few weeks," she said like it had already been decided. "You have the space." I looked around slowly. The two-bedroom unit that had barely fit me and my work life was now a maze of baby items and emotional landmines. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Then Mom added casually, "Of course, they won't be paying rent right now, just until things stabilize." I paid the rent, but apparently they owned the space. That evening, Mom pointed toward my bedroom. "This one's quieter. Better for Parker's sleep." I stood frozen. I had made that room mine. Picked the curtain fabric, patched the paint above the headboard. My desk was still there, my notes taped neatly above it. Now she was assigning it to a baby who didn't even know his own name yet. I slept on the sofa that night. The cushions dipped in the center, and the hallway light stayed on because Parker woke up crying every 2 hours. I turned my face toward the back of the couch and told myself it was temporary. The next morning, I stepped over a pile of baby blankets to reach the coffee pot. Alyssa had left it on all night. It was empty and scorched. A few days later, I came home to the smell of garlic and rosemary. Alyssa had invited a couple of friends over for what she called a small dinner. I hadn't been asked, just notified by the presence of 3 wine glasses in the sink and my favorite throw blanket folded over the back of a chair I'd never seen before. Ryan stayed glued to the TV most days. He'd rewatch his old vlogs, music covers, college performances, even his graduation video. I passed by once while he mumbled along to a speech he had given years ago. "Hard to believe," he said when he noticed me, back when everything felt possible. I didn't respond. I was too tired. Alyssa ran errands but often left Parker with me. She'd text while I was at work. "Just a quick thing, can you feed him if he wakes up?" Or, "He likes the banana oatmeal." By the time I returned in the evenings, the apartment smelled like baby wipes and microwaved spaghetti. I'd step around toys, sit on the edge of my sofa bed, and open my laptop to finish my financial reports. That week, my phone buzzed with a credit alert. My score had dropped by 40 points. I double-checked every transaction. Nothing made sense. I hadn't missed a payment. I hadn't opened any new accounts. Something was off. I thought about asking Mom, but every recent conversation had turned into a guilt trip. The last time I tried to bring up utilities, she sighed and said, "You always think about money, Lauren. Family needs more than that." So I said nothing. I swept the floors, restocked the fridge, and tried to think through the numbers. I even skipped a dinner shift to sit down with my budget sheet. I wasn't just stretched, I was being drained. That weekend, Grandma May texted me, "Still breathing, little one?" I smiled and replied, "Barely, but still here." She sent a heart emoji. I stared at it longer than I should have. Late one night, I walked into the kitchen to grab water. The apartment was quiet, finally. I passed by Mom's purse left on the counter, phone half sticking out. The screen lit up as I passed. I wasn't snooping, just tired and curious. I saw the name first, Ryan, then the message, "Just send me the usual, half of Lauren's rent goes to you anyway." My breath caught. Another text followed. "You're doing so much already. She's fine. She's stable. She won't mind." I stood there, motionless, water bottle in hand, while the fridge hummed and the clock ticked toward midnight. In the living room, Parker let out a soft hiccup from his crib. My crib now, and I felt the smallest shift in my spine, like something cracked, not loud, but final. I wasn't angry. I was done. Back in the living room, I opened my laptop. The screen glowed pale against the darkness. I clicked open the folder labeled Freedom. Inside, my budget spreadsheet, copies of my ID, credit score reports, scanned documents, and a list of apartment rentals I had been updating for months but hadn't dared to act on. I wasn't planning anymore. I was executing. The envelope was taped to the fridge. My name was written in my mom's handwriting, looped and neat, like she had once signed report cards and field trip slips. I opened it before I even took off my shoes. Inside was a printed notice. Effective October 1st, your rent will be adjusted to reflect current occupancy and utility consumption. New monthly rate, $1,960. Please send via Venmo as usual. I stared at the number. The fans buzzed in every corner of the apartment, trying their best against the thick September heat. Parker was fussing again in the second bedroom, my bedroom once, and I heard Alyssa's voice humming off-key, trying to calm him. I set the paper down and walked straight to my laptop. For the past year, I'd tracked every dollar. Rent, utilities, groceries, toiletries. No expense went unlogged. The numbers didn't lie. I'd been holding the roof up with both hands while everyone else sat comfortably beneath it. Mom said the increase was for fairness, but Fair hadn't lived in this apartment for a long time. Still, I didn't call her. Not yet. Instead, I opened my credit monitoring app and refreshed the report. My score had dipped again, small at first, but now sharp and noticeable. I clicked into the detail view. That's when I saw it. A personal line of credit, opened 2 months ago, $8,000 balance, my name, my social security number, my address, except it wasn't this one. It was my parents' house. The words blurred. I blinked, backed out, clicked again just to be sure. I hadn't applied for anything, hadn't co-signed, hadn't even used my emergency credit card in over 6 months. I scrolled through old emails, digging through the clutter. Then I checked my paper inbox. Tucked between a utility bill and an alumni newsletter, I found a single envelope forwarded from my parents' address. Inside, a statement from the lender. Minimum payment missed. Late fee added. I'd never seen it before. That night, I kept the lights low and made chamomile tea, though I knew I wouldn't sleep. I waited until the apartment was quiet, until Ryan's old vlogs stopped playing, until Alyssa's blow dryer clicked off, until even Parker stilled. I stepped lightly past the crib and into the kitchen, where Mom had left her phone face down on the counter. I didn't hesitate. There were texts, dozens, from her to him. Just took the loan under Lauren's name. She'll never notice. If she asks, say it's for plumbing repairs. She's fine. Honestly, she's doing better than we are. Rent money still coming. I'll split half for you and Alyssa. I didn't gasp. I didn't cry. I just stared at the screen, one thumb slowly scrolling down like I was reading a story I already knew the ending to. That's when I realized this wasn't survival. This was orchestration. They had planned it, agreed to it, used me like a savings account that couldn't argue back. I took a deep breath, set the phone down exactly where I'd found it, stepped outside onto the balcony, even though the air was thick with humidity. The stroller was parked there, blocking the view. I moved it gently aside and sat on the plastic patio chair I'd bought myself last spring. My only real furniture. My tea had gone cold. I drank it anyway. Inside, the fans kept spinning. The baby murmured in his sleep, and my mother's phone vibrated softly on the counter. Another message, maybe. Another receipt. I didn't scream. I didn't confront her. I opened my laptop, clicked open a folder I hadn't touched in weeks. It was called In Case I Snap. Inside, screenshots, spreadsheets, a scan of the loan document, dated messages from Mom's phone, credit score reports with timestamps. I renamed it Exit Plan. Then I opened Amazon, typed in large suitcase with wheels, filtered for same-day delivery, selected a navy blue one with reinforced corners and whisper quiet wheels, added to cart, checked out. My fingers didn't shake. I looked around the apartment. It wasn't mine anymore. The walls had new fingerprints. The air carried someone else's perfume. Even the fridge shelves held food I hadn't bought. I'd been generous, patient, respectful, and I had been stolen from. This wasn't the kind of betrayal that left bruises. It left debt, silence, and the weight of pretending not to notice. That night, I folded laundry in the dark. Baby bibs, small socks, Alyssa's soft blouses, and packed them neatly into their designated bins. I didn't touch my own clothes yet, but mentally, I was already gone. No more negotiations. No more, maybe next month. No more looking for fairness where none existed. The suitcase would arrive tomorrow, and for once, I wouldn't be home to greet it with an apology. I need 10 minutes, I said, placing the manila folder on the coffee table between us. Just 10, then you can go back to your day. Ryan looked up from his phone, clearly annoyed by the interruption. Alyssa shifted Parker higher on her hip without saying a word. Mom had just sat down with her second cup of instant coffee. Dad was standing in the kitchen, pretending to rinse a mug that didn't need rinsing. No one answered. So I opened the folder. Inside were printed pages. The personal loan agreement, forged in my name. My credit report, showing the recent damage. A screenshot of the text exchange between Mom and Ryan, including the one where she said, "Just took the loan under Lauren's name. She'll never notice." And a receipt, dated, time-stamped, of every rent payment I had made since moving in. I passed each sheet around slowly, deliberately. No commentary, no anger. When Sylvia reached the page with her own text, her face tightened. What is this supposed to be? What it is, I said, is theft. Oh, don't be dramatic, she snapped. It was for your brother. You weren't even using that credit. And you've always had good finances. What's the problem? Ryan shrugged from the couch. Yeah, seriously. It's not like you're broke. You always make rent. You've got a job. Alyssa tapped at her phone with one hand while bouncing Parker with the other. I make rent, I repeated, because I work 14-hour days and budget every dollar. I've skipped meals. I've passed on school trips. I've walked home at night because I didn't want to spend $3 on the bus. I paused. The room was still except for the fan clicking behind me. And all this time, I continued, you were cashing in on my silence. Dad cleared his throat but said nothing. I pulled out one more document. This one had only 2 words bolded in large print across the top. Eviction notice. I placed it on the table with finality. 48 hours, I said. You need to be out by then. I've already spoken with the landlord. I gave notice on the unit. Starting next month, I won't be here, and neither will you. Sylvia's voice cracked. You're really doing this? I looked at her. Not past her. Not through her. At her. No, I said calmly. You did this. I'm just cleaning it up. She opened her mouth to argue, but no words came. Ryan stood up. Wow, so now you're kicking your own family out? That's who you are? No, I replied. You don't get to define who I am anymore. Alyssa finally looked up. Where are we supposed to go? I'm sure you'll figure it out, I said. You've always been good at letting someone else solve things for you. Dad finally stepped forward. Maybe we should all take a breath. No, Frank, Mom cut in, her voice rising. "Don't start playing the good guy now." He fell silent again. I gathered the papers and slid them back into the folder, stood and walked to the fridge. I taped a small square of white paper on the door, just 3 lines written in black Sharpie. Don't knock, don't call, don't ask. No one followed me as I returned to my room. Parker had started to fuss, his tiny voice rising in protest. I felt a flicker of guilt, but it faded quickly. That night, I packed. Not just clothes, but the important things. The ones that had taken me years to collect. A framed photo with Grandma May at the antique store, my journals, my battered laptop, the comforter I'd saved up for from a Labor Day sale, the kitchen towels I'd embroidered myself during a summer when I thought this apartment might actually feel like home. I left the espresso machine. I left the broken lamp. I left the stain on the carpet that wasn't mine. I zipped the suitcase slowly, deliberately. Its wheels were quiet, just like I wanted them to be. At 2:08 a.m., I turned off the lights, locked the door behind me, and stepped into the hallway. I didn't look back. I didn't cry. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel small. The suitcase rolled softly along the sidewalk as I made my way toward the quiet street, the air just beginning to cool. The night was still, except for the distant hum of traffic and the rhythm of my own steps. Whatever came next, it wouldn't be silence. It would be mine. My new apartment smelled like citrus and furniture polish, but more than anything, it smelled like mine. It was small, just 1 bedroom and a narrow galley kitchen, but sunlight poured through the windows in the morning, and I could see the top of a sycamore tree from the balcony. No one left their socks in the hallway. No one took up my bed. The only noise at night was the low hum of the fridge, and occasionally a neighbor's television murmuring through the wall. I found peace in small rituals, brewing coffee in silence, folding my laundry and stacking the towels by color, lighting a candle at dusk. I didn't need a big life. I just needed a quiet one I could call my own. By October, I'd enrolled in a part-time MBA program. It wasn't glamorous, but it was something I chose, without permission, without compromise. I worked my same job during the day and took online classes at night, scribbling notes at my dining table with a cup of lukewarm tea beside me. My credit score was slowly climbing back. Bit by bit, I was repairing the things no one else even saw as broken. I met Logan in November during a collaborative project with the Chicago office. He was polite, organized, and never once interrupted me when I spoke. We talked mostly about spreadsheets and client timelines, until one afternoon over a late lunch, he asked where I grew up. I paused, told him briefly, and waited for that usual flicker of pity or judgment. But he just nodded and said, "Some people get family by chance. Others have to build it themselves." That was it. No probing, no fixing, just space. We didn't fall into anything dramatic. There were no fireworks, just slow mornings, good conversations, and a calm that didn't ask me to shrink. Sometime in winter, I wrote down part of my story, an anonymous post on a financial independence forum. I didn't expect much, but within days it was shared hundreds of times. Women began messaging me, strangers who sounded just like me, quiet daughters, steady sisters, people who had given everything and learned to ask for nothing in return. A month later, a nonprofit reached out. They were hosting a series called Standing Up After Silence. Would I be willing to speak? I said yes, not because I thought I had the answers, but because I finally understood the power of simply being heard. Grandma May called the night before the event. She asked if I needed anything. I told her no. Then she sighed and added, "Your mom still cries sometimes." But it's not guilt, honey. It's the loss of control. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say, and that was its own kind of freedom. At the event, I stood in front of a small room filled with folding chairs and women of every age. I shared the facts, not the drama. I told the truth, not to hurt anyone, but to set myself down gently in the world. When I finished, a woman in the front row wiped her eyes and nodded, and just like that, I realized I wasn't alone. I never had been. Afterward, Logan met me by the door, handing me a small bouquet of tulips. No big gesture, just presence. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded. "Yeah, better than okay?" As we walked back to the car, he said, almost casually, "I was thinking, maybe we could visit Vermont sometime. No reason, just thought you might want to see it." I smiled. "I'm not afraid of families anymore," I said. "I just learned how to build mine differently. I didn't leave to punish anyone. I left because peace finally mattered more than being understood. In a world that often mistakes quiet people for weak ones, I learned that silence can also be a boundary, not just a burden. Family isn't always where we begin. Sometimes it's what we build through choice, respect, and the quiet decision to no longer carry what was never ours to hold. Forgiveness doesn't always look like returning. It can also mean releasing the need to explain. And freedom, I've found, isn't loud. It's steady, and it shows up in small, sacred spaces we claim for ourselves. If this story spoke to something in you, I invite you to share your thoughts below, or simply take a breath and hold space for your own. Thank you for listening.